Hi, I'm Dark Dragon from Acid Cave. I'm doing a special spooky project for Olden Era. Happy Halloween, everyone! Welcome to the new series where I talk about the might and magic creatures throughout the series. Vampires are definitely on the top of the well-known undead creature in pop culture. Did you know that vampires in fiction live for centuries? This means that in Olden Era, longtime fans can see a lot of familiar faces. As a linguist, it would be a shame to omit the origin of the word itself. The newest iteration can be traced back to Serbian vampir. However, most linguists agree that origin can be found in Old Slavic languages, upir. For instance, in Polish that would be upiór, which since has shifted the meaning, and wąpierz. What's the origin story? Through the ages, people have believed in creatures that look undead and consume blood, which we may talk about more in the future. When it comes to vampires, it all started around the 18th century in Gothic European literature. Around that time, vampire hysteria was speaking in Europe. Vampiric figures appeared in the 18th century poetry, such as Der Vampir. In English, however, it started at the beginning of the 19th century. Most notably with the vampire and the Jawa, they most likely popularized the motif of a mysterious aristocrat who seduces young women only to drain their blood and disappear. Later important vampire stories established the vampire femme fatale. These include La Morte Amoureuse, the lover, and Carmilla. And finally, Dracula. Dracula! It is arguably the most important work of a vampire fiction. There are few today who don't know about the Transylvanian Count. It basically started the vampires as aristocracy aesthetics. It has introduced most of the vampiric supernatural abilities, including mind control and shape-shifting into bats, and using them to prey upon innocent victims. Many popular vampire characteristics, such as methods of survival and distraction, and even vampires being of Eastern European origin, were solidified in this popular novel, and especially through its film adaptation. The story was also inspired by two historical figures, notably Vlad III Dracula, known as the Impaler, and Countess Elizabeth Bathory, who was rumored to have bathed in or consumed the blood of young women to preserve her beauty. Dracula in turn inspired the silent black and white film Nosferatu, in which a vampire was first depicted as being vulnerable to sunlight. Moreover, it popularized the more monstrous look of vampires. And later on, many different depictions of vampires appeared. Perhaps it's worth mentioning silly Twilight vampires. They are sparkling in the sun, don't have iconic fangs, and despite living more than hundreds of years, they still hang out around high schools. And what's the reality? Some vampire characteristics may have origins in diseases. Porphyria causes sunlight sensitivity, tuberculosis causes wasting, pellagra thins the skin, rabies causes biting and sensitivity to light, and garlic. And garlic was common in medicine. People used it not only to eat, but also mash it and put it in their wounds, which naturally caused repulsive reactions. It seems like a good place to mention that the belief that people could rise from the dead stems from being buried alive. Due to limited knowledge in the medical field at the time, some people would be buried prematurely. This in turn could result in strange sounds emanating from a coffin, and if it was later dug up, fingernails marks were discovered on the inside from the victim trying to escape. Some suppose that such buried people would hit their head or noses, and it could give an impression they had been feeding. It's just a theory though, and a questionable one at that. How would such people be still strong enough and alive for some time to do that without food, water, or fresh air? A simpler explanation for sounds is the bubbling of the escaping gases from natural decomposition of the bodies. If the graves were disturbed, the most likely causes were grave robbers or wild animals. Now let's move to Might and Magic games, where vampires have been present since the very beginning of the franchise. We're focusing on units in the Heroes games here, however, I will tell you something about upcoming Olden Era heroes. We start with Heroes 2, as Necropolis was absent in Heroes 1. Here, vampires were powerful tier 4 creatures. They could prevent counterattack, and when upgraded to vampire lords, drain life. They looked like counts and transformed into bats to move. In Heroes 3, vampires looked more like Nosferatu, more beast-like. They also morphed into bats to move. The abilities and the tier remained the same. Vampire lords became jokingly known in the community as tier 7 units due to their powerful abilities and versatility. Often forgotten, Quest for the Dragonbone Staff was a Heroes spin-off, but essentially a remake of King's Bounty. Here, vampires were one of the most powerful units in the game. Heroes 4 decided to go back to aristocratic look. They are pale and their life-draining attack is blue, perhaps to keep the age ratings down. The sound design when they get damaged is perhaps one of my favorites in the entire series. Moreover, heroes are acting as units in this installment. Sadly, although they can be vampires, each class gets just a generic model. In Heroes 5, 6 and 7, action takes place in a different universe called Ashan. Let's highlight that vampires work differently there. Also known as Akharus, they represent the highest undead form, achievable after drinking Namtarm's venom. In this advanced incarnation, they start looking 1 year younger with each new century of unlife. However, their youthful, immortal forms come with a price: emotional emptiness. In Heroes 5, we got vampires with swords, which was probably heavily influenced by Castlevania series and Blade comics. Despite the different appearance, they still drain life, and enemies cannot retaliate. In the second expansion, Tribes of the East, we got introduced to alternative upgrades. This way, we got Vampire Prince. Looking into their eyes brings a risk of being lost in a long sleep and falling under their total power. Unfortunately, they lose no enemy retaliation ability. In Heroes 6, vampires and vampire lords look even more like knights, more akin to Castlevania's Alucard with long white hair. Apart from standard vamp abilities, they are vulnerable to light. Upgraded units can also activate an ability where the next hit they were going to take will be a miss instead. In Heroes 7, the design of vampires at first was supposed to be just recolored version of Heroes 6 units. Thanks to the community and the official vote, the design was changed to Bloody Monster. Perhaps less dignified, but finally some vamps ditched the sword and follow their animalistic instincts more. In Olden Era, vampires represent one of the strongest creatures, the final tier of Necropolis town. They define themselves as the pinnacle of evolution, and perhaps at the time they were. They are certainly full of themselves and seem vain. These creatures are noticeably larger than in any other Might and Magic game, and also have huge bat wings. It seems like a mix between the beast, Nosferatu-like, and more human-like creatures. Vampires and vampire lords have an overgrown high fantasy-like swords, whereas vampire scholars are using blood magic to damage opponents. These are particularly interesting, as blood magic hasn't been explored in Might and Magic games. They are using it to breed better quality livestock and control others. What else can such magic do? Is it going to be explored in the future expansions or titles? Only time will tell. Let's talk about heroes in Olden Era now. Let's start with Zan, the purple vampire from Heroes 2. Well, we didn't really learn a lot about him then, but he returns in Olden Era. Zam was an alchemist, a loner focused on his work. Once a vampire lady was in love with him, but he rejected her. And so, he works for Necromancer's Guild, alone in his lab. Being undead, without mortal needs, he has no distractions now. Why is he purple though? It remains a mystery to us, for now. Galthran. By the time of Heroes 3, Galthran became famous for developing new methods of creating and commanding skeletons. During Golden Era, Galthran is a freshly bitten vampire. He's ambitious and bloodthirsty. He's already experimenting with skeletons. Opposite to the most of his brethren, he seeks to gain power separately from the Necromancer's Guild. Thand. He first appeared in Heroes 3 as well. No one is really sure how long Thand has been alive. Some say he fought for Erathia during the Timber Wars, but he fell prey to a vampire during an all-night march through Phynaxia. During Golden Era, Thand is the head of the Necromancer's Guild in Shadowspire. Lord Thand originally isn't from Jadame, but he has made quite a name for himself here. He's known for practicing nightshade magic, and most notably for creating the Nightshade Brazier, which allows vampires to roam freely during the daylight hours. He was recognized by Nosferatu himself. Moreover, his policies actually helped bridge the gap between necromancers and common people. Many people living among necromancers in various towns and regions of Jadame entrust them with the remaining of their dead. Temple of the Sun is against it, although the funeral rites done by the necromancers actually help the spirits ascend. According to the necromancers, of course. In Might and Magic 8, he's the second in command of the Necromancer's Guild, and the Brazier is actually stolen by the Temple of the Sun. Rufus. Long ago, Rufus begged his beloved wife to embrace vampirism so they could remain together forever. She refused. Even resurrection spells failed. As if her very soul resisted him, he became bitter and now turns into a vampire everyone he fancies, even if it's against their own will. One of such cases is another Olden Era hero, Natalida. She tried to escape Rufus, but his influence was just too strong, and commoners would always turn her in. Betrayed at every turn, she found refuge in the wilds, where beasts and abandoned pets became her only family. Now, surprisingly, she's a pack mother. She hunts alongside her ever-loyal companions. Artorius Veritas was once a renowned knight, a hero who slayed monsters and aided the weak. But when he fell to an ancient vampire, he became what he once haunted. Though he escaped his sire, his fellow knights saw only a monster. Desperate, he turned to Necromancer's Guild, offering his service in exchange for the blood he needed to survive. He still fights, but his unrelenting fury poisons both friend and foe as he struggles to accept what he has become. That's it for today, folks. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.